The ballroom sparkled with golden light. Chandeliers glistened overhead, and soft music floated in the air. It was the wedding of Daniel Carter, Margaret's only son, and the bride Vanessa Blake. Guests laughed, glasses clinked, and waiters carried silver trays with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Margaret walked in quietly. She wore a navy blue dress she had chosen carefully. It wasn't expensive, but it was neat and elegant, and it reminded her of her late husband, who had always said blue made her eyes glow. She had pinned her silver hair back and added pearl earrings, her only jewelry for the evening. She didn't need anything more. Daniel, her son, saw her enter and his eyes softened. For a moment, Margaret felt her heart swell with pride. He looked so handsome in his black tuxedo, smiling, greeting guests, standing tall. She thought, that's my boy. I raised him alone, and now he's grown, starting his own family. But there was something else. She couldn't help noticing the way Vanessa's smile tightened when her eyes fell on her. The bride was stunning. Her white gown shimmered with crystals, her hair styled perfectly, her makeup flawless. Yet her gaze carried something sharp, almost mocking. Margaret had felt it before. Vanessa had always looked at her as if she were less. Too simple. Too old-fashioned. Too ordinary. Margaret had brushed it off, telling herself that love would change things. That maybe with time, Vanessa would learn to appreciate kindness more than appearances. But tonight, at the wedding, in front of everyone, Vanessa would show her true colors. The dinner was served, laughter filled the tables, and the band played softly in the corner. Margaret sat near the front, speaking politely with a few of Daniel's old college friends. She laughed quietly, enjoying their stories, even though she felt slightly out of place among the glamorous dresses and diamond necklaces surrounding her. Then it happened. Vanessa walked toward her, holding a tall glass of red wine. Her steps were steady, her smile wide. But her eyes gleamed with mischief. "Oh, Margaret," she said loudly, so that nearby guests turned their heads. "Let me help you celebrate properly." Before Margaret could respond, Vanessa leaned forward, pretending to stumble. The deep red liquid spilled out of the glass and splashed across Margaret's chest and lap. Gasps rippled across the room. The music seemed to pause. Margaret froze, staring at the spreading stain on her navy blue dress. The red wine soaked the fabric quickly, dripping down to the floor. Vanessa put her hand to her mouth in fake shock. "Oh dear, I'm so clumsy," she said, but her voice carried a cruel amusement. And then she laughed. A high, sharp laugh that cut through the silence. "Guess that's all you can afford, huh? At least the red matches your cheap dress." Some guests chuckled nervously, unsure whether to laugh or stay quiet. A few covered their mouths in surprise. Margaret's face flushed hot. She could feel every eye on her, burning into her like flames. Her hands shook as she tried to dab the stain with a napkin, but the wine had already ruined the fabric. Daniel stood across the hall, frozen. His face was pale, his jaw tight, but he didn't move. He looked torn, caught between his mother and his new wife, paralyzed by the moment. Vanessa smirked, tilting her head. "Don't worry, poor old woman," she said mockingly, her voice dripping with arrogance. "We'll cover your laundry bill. Consider it our wedding gift to you." The humiliation was complete. Margaret felt her throat tighten, her chest heavy. She wanted to leave, to run, but her feet wouldn't move. She had endured many things in life: loneliness, widowhood, struggles of raising a son alone. But never had she been so openly ridiculed, and not in front of strangers, but on the happiest day of her son's life. Her eyes darted to Daniel again, hoping, praying for him to speak up, to defend her, to at least come to her side. But he remained frozen, his fists clenched, his lips pressed together, as though the words he wanted to say were trapped inside him. Margaret took a deep breath, fighting the tears rising in her eyes. She would not let Vanessa see her break. Not here. Not now. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and forced her voice to remain steady. But before she could say a word, a chair scraped loudly against the floor. Someone had stood up, and in that heavy, silent ballroom, all eyes turned to see who it was. The man who stood was Mr. Collins, a calm figure with silver hair and steady eyes. He placed his napkin on the table, pushed back his chair, and spoke in a clear voice that carried to every corner of the ballroom. "That is enough." The room went still. The band stopped playing. Even the waiters paused in the doorway. Vanessa's smile twitched, then hardened again as she faced him. "And who are you?" she asked, loud enough for others to hear. "Her protector?" Mr. Collins did not blink. "I am her attorney," he said, pointing gently toward Margaret, who still stood with wine soaking her dress. And I have known her for 25 years. A whisper ran through the tables. Daniel took a step forward, his eyes fixed on the attorney. Margaret kept her chin lifted, though her hands trembled. She looked as if she wished this moment would pass quietly. Mr. Collins continued, his voice even. Young lady, you have mocked a woman you do not know. You have laughed at a dress you think is cheap. And you have done it inside a building that exists because she built it. A few guests frowned, confused. Vanessa crossed her arms, forcing a laugh. Built it? Please. This is the Grand Alton. It's owned by Carter Hospitality, Mr. Collins said, not raising his voice. A holding company registered under the name M. Carter. M stands for Margaret. Silence. The name hung in the air like a bell strike. Across the room, the hotel manager, Mr. Patel, stepped forward. He had been watching, worried. Now he bowed his head toward Margaret. Mrs. Carter, he said, gentle and respectful. Do you wish me to bring a fresh shawl? We have one in the bridal suite. And if you prefer, I can arrange for a new dress from our boutique. Several guests turned in their seats. The dots connected. Some mouths fell open. A woman whispered, She owns the hotel? Another leaned to her husband. The chain, he said, the chain. Vanessa's face lost its color. No, she said too fast. No, this is a joke. This is some performance. She looked around for support, but none came. The laughter she had invited earlier was gone. Mr. Collins reached into his inner pocket and took out a flat leather folder. He did not wave it around. He opened it simply and removed a clipped set of papers. The deed of ownership, he said, and the operating agreement. You may read the name at the bottom. He held it out to Daniel first. Daniel's hand shook as he took the papers. He read the signature. He knew the handwriting. He bit his lip, eyes shining. Mom, he whispered. Margaret finally spoke, quiet but firm. I did not want this announced. Not today. She turned to Vanessa with a sadness that hurt to watch. I came here as a mother, not as an owner. Mr. Patel nodded once to the staff. 2 attendants hurried over with warm towels and a soft cream shawl. Margaret thanked them in a low voice and dabbed at the wine without fuss. She did not look at the crowd. She did not try to feed the gossip. She simply took care of herself with quiet dignity. Vanessa tried to recover. So what if she owns it? She said, her voice cracking. It doesn't change anything. She still wore a bargain bin dress to my wedding. A gasp rolled across the floor. Someone said, Stop. Another, Enough. But it was Mr. Collins who answered, and his words were not sharp, they were steady. It changes something important, he said. It reveals who you are when you think someone has no power. That is the only test that matters. Vanessa's lip trembled. She looked at Daniel for rescue. He did not move. Mr. Collins turned to the manager. Mr. Patel, would you confirm the booking details for the benefit of those present? Mr. Patel cleared his throat. Yes, sir. The wedding booking was fully prepaid by an anonymous benefactor 6 months ago. Mrs. Carter asked that her name not appear. She wanted today to be about her son. A wave of shame swept the room. People shifted in their seats. A bridesmaid lowered her gaze. The best man fixed his tie and stared at the floor. Vanessa swallowed hard. Anonymous? She paid for, her voice failed. Margaret finally looked up. I only wanted Daniel to have a beautiful day, she said. Not to feel pressure. Not to think of money. I kept my name off the papers for his peace. She glanced at her red-stained dress. And because a quiet life is a good life. A slow murmur of respect spread through the guests. Heads nodded. A few people clapped once by instinct, then stopped, unsure if it was the moment. The room felt new, as if a fog had lifted. Vanessa took a step toward Margaret, hands up, pleading now. I'm sorry, she whispered, then louder. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't know. I thought. She could not finish the sentence, because the truth inside it was ugly. I thought you were less. Margaret did not gloat. Vanessa, a person's worth is not a brand, a dress, or a price tag. It is how you treat people when no one is watching. She looked at her son. And it is the respect you give to family. Daniel's throat worked as he tried to speak. Mom, his voice cracked. He handed the documents back to Mr. Collins, who slid them away without drama. The attorney's work was done. There was nothing more to prove. A gentle clink sounded as the bandleader, reading the room, set down his baton. The violinist lifted his instrument and played a soft line, something like an apology. The sound threaded through the air and calmed the tight edges of the moment. Mr. Patel nodded to the staff again. A housekeeper quietly began blotting the carpet. Another brought sparkling water. A third dimmed one chandelier to soften the light. The hotel seemed to shield Margaret, not as an owner, but as a guest who deserved care. Vanessa stared at Daniel. "Please," she said. "We can forget this. It was a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes." Daniel lifted his eyes to hers. "Mistakes happen in private," he said slowly. "Humiliation is a choice." No one spoke after that. The sentence landed like a stone in a still lake, ripples moving out to every corner table. Vanessa turned to the crowd, desperate for a friendly face. She met only cool stares and turned backs. She turned to Margaret again, searching for mercy. She found kindness, but not softness. "I will not ruin my son's day," Margaret said. "We will continue. But understand this, Vanessa. Trust cannot live where cruelty is fed." The band leader raised his hand, offering the room a gentle path forward. A piano chord rose like a sigh. People took their seats again, quiet, thoughtful, humbled. The ceremony coordinator whispered with the officiant near the arch of flowers. Plans shifted, timings moved, but the heart of the evening still beat. Mr. Collins touched Margaret's shoulder lightly. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I am," she said, and for the first time since the wine had spilled, she smiled, small, real, unshaken. "Thank you." He inclined his head and returned to his chair. Mr. Patel stepped back as well, but not before giving Daniel a look that said, "Take care of your mother." Daniel nodded once. The officiant called for the guests to rise. A hush fell again, different from the first, deeper, more honest. The aisle lay bright under the lights. The arch waited, heavy with white roses. Daniel did not move toward it. He turned instead slowly, to face Vanessa. His eyes were clear now, no longer confused. "Before we continue," he said, his voice carrying without effort, "we need to talk." And in that second, everyone knew that the night had changed its path. The music, the flowers, the perfect schedule, none of it could hide the truth that had been pulled into the open. The room breathed in. It did not breathe out. The future hung between bride and groom like a thin, breakable thread. Then Daniel took a single step closer to her, and the thread began to strain. The thread finally snapped. Daniel's words, calm, steady, but heavy, echoed across the ballroom. "Before we continue, we need to talk." The officiant froze mid-step. Guests shifted uneasily, exchanging nervous glances. The band fell into silence, leaving only the faint hum of the chandeliers above. Vanessa's face flushed red, then pale. Her smile twitched as she tried to hold on to her composure. "Daniel," she whispered, forcing a laugh. "Not now. Everyone's waiting." But Daniel didn't move. His fists clenched at his sides, his jaw tight. "Not now," he repeated, his voice sharper. "You just humiliated my mother in front of 200 people. Tell me, Vanessa, when exactly would be the right time?" Gasps rippled through the guests. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others leaned in, unable to turn from the unfolding scene. Vanessa stammered, her eyes darting toward the crowd. I didn't mean it. It was a joke, just a little joke." "A joke?" Daniel snapped, his voice cutting through her words like glass. "You spilled wine on her dress and mocked her like she was trash. That's not a joke, Vanessa. That's cruelty." The bride's hands shook. She reached for Daniel's arm, desperate to reel him back, but he stepped aside. "I swear," she said quickly. "I didn't know she was." She bit her tongue, realizing the sentence was about to betray her thoughts. "You didn't know she was rich?" Daniel's eyes narrowed, the anger in them burning hotter. "That's what you were about to say, isn't it? You thought she was poor, so you treated her like garbage." The truth hit the room like a thunderclap. Whispers spread from table to table. "She only cares about money." She laughed at his mother. How could she? Vanessa's voice cracked as she tried to fight back. "No, that's not what I meant. I was nervous. It was the wine, it was." Daniel raised his hand. "Stop." His tone was final, cold. "Stop trying to excuse what you did. You showed your true self tonight." Tears welled in Vanessa's eyes. For the first time that night, the mask of perfection slipped away, revealing raw panic underneath. "Please, Daniel," she begged, her voice trembling. "Don't do this here. Don't embarrass me in front of everyone." "Embarrass you?" Daniel's laugh was bitter, humorless. He gestured toward his mother, still sitting with the red stain across her dress, her dignity untouched by the mess. "You humiliated the one person who has sacrificed everything for me. And you want me to protect you." The guests' silence deepened. Some nodded quietly, others murmured agreement. A bridesmaid shifted uncomfortably, her eyes downcast. Even the best man looked ashamed to stand behind Vanessa. Margaret rose slowly from her chair, her shawl draped neatly around her shoulders. She walked to Daniel's side, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Enough, son," she said softly. "This isn't about choosing sides. Tonight was meant to celebrate love, not destroy it." Her voice was calm, steady, filled with the quiet strength she had carried all her life. The guests listened as if her words held more weight than anything else said that night. Daniel turned to her, his anger softening for a moment. "Mom, you don't deserve this." "I can bear a stained dress," Margaret replied, looking at him with kind but firm eyes. "But I will not bear you tearing your life apart in anger. What matters now is truth, not revenge." Her words hung in the air, gentle yet unshakable. Vanessa broke down then, her tears spilling freely. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I swear I didn't mean it. I thought she was just, again, her tongue betrayed her, and she stopped herself from finishing. Just poor. Just unimportant." Margaret looked at her steadily. "You thought I was less. And that told me everything I needed to know about you." Vanessa's knees weakened. She dropped onto the nearest chair, covering her face with her hands. Her makeup streaked as tears smudged down her cheeks. The bride who had once seemed untouchable now looked small, fragile, and exposed. Daniel stood still, his chest rising and falling. His silence spoke louder than any words. He had seen the truth. He couldn't unsee it. Finally, Margaret turned to him again. Her voice was low, meant only for him, but it carried enough for the nearest guests to hear. "If she loves you, Daniel, she will learn respect. If she does not, she will never belong in this family." Daniel closed his eyes. The words cut deep, because they were not spoken with anger, but with love. He knew she was right. Vanessa sobbed into her hands, whispering apologies, but they fell flat in the silence of the ballroom. No one moved to comfort her. The weight of her actions pressed down heavier than any words of forgiveness could lift. Margaret stood tall, her ruined dress clinging to her, but her dignity shining brighter than ever. She was not the one who looked broken in that moment. The room belonged to her now, though she had never asked for it. Daniel opened his eyes, looking at his mother, then at his bride. His heart ached, but the truth was clear. The wedding could not go on as if nothing had happened. The silence stretched until finally the officiant, voice unsure, asked, "Shall we continue?" No one answered. The night had turned, and everyone knew it. The officiant's uncertain words, "Shall we continue?" hung in the air like a fragile glass about to shatter. No one moved. No one spoke. The grand ballroom, which just hours earlier had been filled with laughter, music, and the promise of love, now felt heavy and suffocating. Daniel stood at the center, torn between two worlds. The mother who had given him everything and the bride who had just destroyed the trust he thought they shared. His heart pounded in his chest, but his voice came out steady. "No," he said finally. "We can't continue. Not like this." Gasps rippled through the guests. Some clutched their pearls, others leaned forward, waiting for more. Vanessa's head snapped up, her tear-streaked face pale with panic. "What do you mean no?" she whispered, her voice trembling. She took a step toward Daniel, reaching for his hand. "Please, Daniel, it was a mistake. Don't do this. Don't end our wedding like this." But Daniel pulled his hand back. His jaw was tight, his eyes burning with disappointment. "You didn't just spill wine, Vanessa. You spilled every ounce of respect I thought you had for my family. For my mother." Tears streamed down her face. "I was nervous. I wanted to look confident." "No," Daniel cut her off. "You wanted to look powerful. And you thought tearing her down would make you shine." The crowd murmured in agreement. A woman in the back whispered, "She's ruined everything." Another guest muttered, "Poor Daniel." Vanessa shook her head desperately. "Please, I'll apologize to her. I'll do anything." Margaret, who had been silent, finally stepped forward. She looked at Vanessa with calm eyes, her ruined dress still clinging to her frame, but her dignity unshaken. "Vanessa," she said softly, "you don't need to apologize to me. You need to look at yourself and ask why you thought cruelty was easier than kindness." Her words were like a mirror, clear, painful, impossible to ignore. Vanessa broke down, falling to her knees in front of Margaret. "I'm sorry," she sobbed loudly, her voice echoing in the silent hall. "Please forgive me. I didn't mean it. Don't take Daniel away from me. I'll change. I swear I'll change." The sight was pitiful. The bride, once proud and dazzling, now collapsed on the floor, makeup smeared, her perfect gown wrinkled and stained with tears. The guests looked on, some in shock, some in pity, but most in quiet judgment. Margaret bent slightly, her voice calm but firm. I don't have to take Daniel away from you. You've done that yourself. Trust once broken is harder to rebuild than stone once shattered. Daniel's chest tightened at his mother's words. He looked at Vanessa, this woman he had once imagined a future with, and saw not love, but a reflection of arrogance and greed. His heart hurt, but clarity finally settled in. Vanessa, he said, his voice low but strong, I can forgive mistakes. But what I saw tonight wasn't a mistake. It was who you are when you think no one important is watching. And I can't build a marriage on that. The room gasped again. Vanessa's sobs turned to cries. No, Daniel, please. Don't leave me. Don't embarrass me like this in front of everyone. Daniel's voice cracked, but he didn't back down. You embarrassed yourself. For a moment, all sound vanished. Then a single chair scraped back as one guest stood to leave. Another followed. Soon, more guests were rising, whispering to each other as they headed for the doors. The grand wedding reception dissolved, not into celebration, but into scattered footsteps and hushed voices of scandal. The band packed away their instruments in silence. The officiant quietly closed his book. Even the hotel staff moved carefully, as though afraid to disturb the storm that had already passed. Vanessa remained kneeling, crying, begging for a miracle that would not come. Daniel turned away, his face pale and hollow. He walked toward his mother, and without hesitation, wrapped his arms around her. For the first time that night, he let the tears fall. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered against her shoulder. I should have defended you sooner. Margaret held him tightly, her hand on the back of his head like she had done when he was a child. You saw the truth when it mattered, Daniel. That's enough. She kissed his forehead gently, her eyes glistening. You'll heal. You'll find someone who knows love isn't measured in wealth or power. And when you do, you'll remember this night. Not as the night your heart broke, but as the night you learned what respect really means. Daniel pulled back, his face streaked with tears, but calmer now. He nodded. You're right, Mom. You always are. Together, they walked out of the ballroom. Not rushed, not defeated, just steady, side by side. Guests parted silently to make way for them, some bowing their heads in respect. Vanessa remained behind, her sobs echoing in the emptying hall, a bride left with her gown, her shame, and the heavy weight of regret. And Margaret? She walked out into the night air with her son at her side, her ruined dress a badge of quiet strength. She had lost nothing that night, only revealed the truth. Because true wealth, she knew, had never been about owning hotels or building empires. True wealth was dignity, and that no one could take from her. The wedding had ended in silence, but Margaret's dignity had spoken louder than all the music in the world.